I've got my little cheat sheet here. This is the entire talk that I'm giving tonight. Ready? I got a great question from Yatin the other day, and Meg was there too. I'm sure that both of these guys are wondering the same things, and I'm sure that many of you have also wondered, where did this stuff come from? Who came up with martial arts? Like, I'm sure a lot of people think like, oh, Sifu made this. He just made it up in his backyard and kind of figured it out. I wish that were the case. I would be so proud of myself. I came up with about zero of the stuff that we do. At best, I kind of make things fit in a way that works. My Sifu said the same thing. My Sifu is actually kind of an important, kind of well-known person in the martial arts industry. He's one of the people who has taught like real martial arts successfully to a really big number of people, to adults for a long time, and people know him as the Sifu who teaches meditation, because this is like one of the reasons that people stick around so long, is because there's something really behind it. And what he teaches and what we teach is kind of largely derived from a single form of Kung Fu, which I'll talk a little bit about tonight, and the founder of that. But it's also kind of influenced by other things from other arts. So, like, my Sifu has 4 different black belts, the black sash in Kung Fu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 2 Japanese styles of karate, and that's very uncommon. Usually it's just you get your black belt or your black sash at one thing and you stop. And then most people are just like, that's it. I'm done learning martial arts. Now I'm going to go play basketball or whatever else it is that they do. So it's really nice to continue practicing and to continue learning more. I'm going to focus on the Chinese styles that we learn, and you were asking me this after the Kung Fu class, so I'm going to focus on that especially. But this stuff has been around for a very long time. So martial arts, which is distinct from fighting, right? Martial arts includes some fighting, but it also includes the internal parts of our practice like meditation, mindfulness. When you're practicing as a moving meditation, we could call this martial arts as well. This is a more recent phenomenon. Fighting has been around for millions of years, right? Ever since the first amoeba ate the next one, that's like fighting, right? And some people say that we evolved to make a fist so that we can hold tools. Some people say we evolved to make a fist so we can punch each other. And so as soon as you could make a fist, people were punching each other in the face. That's a long time ago. Martial arts, still pretty ancient, but not that ancient. So around the year 500 is when Bodhidharma, who is that man who we've made a statue of and put up there, who's always disapprovingly looking over the dojo like, what are you doing out here? Do better push-ups than that. He came to China from India. And there is a lot of legend around this man. Most of the stuff that you'll hear me talk about tonight is legend. Some of it is, of course, based in true things that happened. But kind of like a lot of our legendary or religious figures, some of this stuff is well exaggerated, if not completely made up. In any case, so around the year 500, Bodhidharma comes to China. His visit is anticipated by lots of people there. He's a well-known Buddhist monk, and in China, all these people, including the people who are kind of in charge, the emperor in that region, is like, can't wait for Bodhidharma to come here so that I can show him all of the amazing things that I've done. And he gets there, and he comes to the palace, and he's like telling, look at this temple that I've built, and look at all these amazing things that I've done. Tell me, Bodhidharma, tell me that I'm going to heaven. Tell me that I've got salvation or that I'm enlightened or whatever. And Bodhidharma says, none of this means anything. You did it all so that you could get something out of it. You did it all so that you could gain, recognition or favor or, favor of the gods or whatever. So all of this is meaningless. The emperor doesn't like that, so he kicks Bodhidharma out. Bodhidharma is traveling through the countryside, and he comes to a little temple in the woods, and this becomes one of the most famous temples, Shaolin Temple. So Shaolin Temple is this legendary place where martial arts is kind of born. And when Bodhidharma gets there, it's already filled with monks. He didn't build the temple. It had already been there for a while. And these monks were there, and they were meditating and practicing, reciting their sutras and copying things down. And the legend goes that he went there and he sat in his cave, and he sat there for 9 years, the years depend on the legend that you're hearing. And in some of the stories, they say that Bodhidharma stared at the wall. So he did an open eye meditation. He stared at the wall for so long that a hole got carved into the wall from the power of his vision. Another related story says that he got tired of getting drowsy during meditation, so he sliced off his eyelids. And where his eyelids fell on the ground, that's where the first tea trees sprang up, so that you can make tea to stay awake during meditation. And that's thanks to Bodhidharma's eyelids. A lot of fun stories around this, but generally, he is credited with being the person who kind of created martial arts as a combination of the physicality of it that has a fighting application and the meditation aspect of it. He didn't invent meditation, he didn't invent fighting, but the idea is that he put them together. And when he invented martial arts, it was nothing like what we do now. It was super rudimentary. So Bodhidharma was not like an expert fighter. He was mostly a monk, and part of the legend says that he saw that the monks were getting lazy and tired, and they were falling asleep from not having enough exercise. They didn't have any energy, so he's like, we're going to come up with some rudimentary physical exercise that has a fighting component too. Some of the stories say like, oh, the monks were always being attacked by like these raiders that would come around and attack the temple, so they needed to learn how to fight. Maybe not, but he invented stuff, and it was like this. It's like stand in a horse stance, and then really fancy, throw a punch like this, or really fancy, like stand like this and push. This is like the extent of it in the beginning, and then it grew over many generations to become kind of what we now recognize as Kung Fu. And that is part of the story behind Shaolin. One of the people who other legends say came through Shaolin Temple and studied there is a very well-known figure in Chinese history, General Yu. So General Yu is the founder of several different styles of martial arts. Most of them are more famous than the style that we do. So the legends say that and this is the part that I wrote down to make sure I didn't mess it up. So this is, by the way, around, we know exactly when General Yu was born, because he was a historical figure for sure. He was born in 1103, March 24th, and he died 1142, January 28th. So this was also a long time ago. How long ago is that? 900 years-ish? Long time ago. And so he was born to a farmer in Henan, which is right around Shaolin. And they say that he trained with a monk there at Shaolin called Zhou Tong. And over the years, kind of studying and kind of coming up with his own stuff, because he was a general, a famous general that kind of taught his soldiers how to do some super effective fighting for the battlefield. This was not from an art perspective. This was, this had an internal perspective to it, but this was really kind of practically for the battlefield. What could work for an army or a fighter, a soldier, to defeat other people? And this is kind of a accelerated way to test martial techniques. So a lot of the stuff that we practice has been honed over, hundreds and, over 1,000 years. And some of that was done in actual, battles on the battlefield. A lot of it was just done like monks sparring against other monks, and people kind of studying things on a less accelerated pace. But on the battlefield, you know who wins, you know who's better, because they don't die. So this was General Yu Fei. And he invented, or at least is credited with coming up with Eagle Claw and Xin Yi, which are two pretty well-known styles. And they say that he studied at Shaolin what they call elephant style. I have not heard about this until I was researching this today, so I can't talk about the veracity of this, but it's on Wikipedia, so it's got to be partly true at least. So elephant style, which has joint locks and chin up. So the joint locks and stuff that we do in the partner class, some of this stuff is kind of directly from this original style as well. And so he some of the styles that he created, like Xinyi, this was like a combination of internal practice, qigong, which has been around for a long, long time. Kind of simple stuff. And so some of you have maybe learned it in class, or you were on retreat, and it's a basic exercise that's meant to help like energy. Flow, and you're like doing things that could be a martial application, but a lot of it is like stretching and breathing and about the internal energy. So it's like a combination of that and the things that he learned while he was practicing with a spear. And so a lot of the stuff that you'll read about General Yu is like the amazing things that he was able to do, like as an archer, and the great stuff that he was able to do with a spear, and the way that he taught his soldiers to use a spear. All that stuff is great, but he kind of combined like the internal art with the spear stuff to create Xinyi, in a similar way to create Yuchia, which is the style that we do. A much less common style, not as famous, but this is one of the styles that he's credited with creating. And so this again is about 900 or 800 years old, the style that we do. And it does not look the same as when he first came up with it. This is a real unfortunate thing about many styles of martial arts, is the person who makes it dies. That's unfortunate because they're dead. But then also, people close the book on the style. They say, that's it. We're not going to change this style at all. And it's like, you put it in a museum, and it stays exactly that way. And it can be really nice to practice a style like that, because you get like a sense of history, and like, this thing has been passed on exactly this way from generation to generation. There's something really nice about that. And some of the techniques that we do are very old and have been unchanged because there are only so many ways to punch somebody, right? Nobody punches anybody like this anymore that I know of. They for sure tried doing this in the beginning. First person broke their thumb, and they're like, oh, we should try putting the thumb here. And that's it, right? Very few people punch with a bent wrist. First time somebody broke the wrist like this, they thought, well, we should straighten the wrist. So that stuff has remained unchanged. The specifics of how you punch and how you move your body and how you combine it in combinations with the sidestepping and all that stuff, that changes over the years and has become what it is today, and I hope will continue to change over the years. I'll die someday, my Sifu will die someday, and then you guys are going to, if you're still alive, will kind of continue practicing, and it will continue to change. It is an evolving, organic thing, which is really beautiful. This is really the way that martial arts should be. Okay, so that's General Yu. The last person I'll talk, oh wait, I have more to that. Well, so he's got a whole history behind him, great long story. He is like venerated. I've had actually people come in and say, I want to practice this style because this general is such a great like historical figure, and I want to practice one of his styles that he's created. Great. But so he was in the military in the Song dynasty, fought against the Jin dynasty, and then part of his story that is kind of tragic, they say, is these two like factions were making peace, and so since this general was so powerful, his emperor was like, we're going to have to bring you in, and they imprisoned him, and they put him to death to kind of stop the peace from falling apart. And there's a lot more of that if you want to do some research. But it was like on false charges, this man was killed. And in some of the stories, they talk about his tattoo, which I didn't write down exactly what his tattoo says, but he's got this big tattoo on his back that says something like, country and brotherhood above all else, something like that. It's like this very dramatic scene where apparently he like ripped off his shirt to show this tattoo and kind of like prove his innocence. He's like, all I ever cared about was my country. Okay, so that's General Yu. And then Chen Feng, who I'll talk about, who was kind of supposed to be around the same time. And this guy also had lots of interesting legends around him. He is the inventor of Tai Chi. And this is one of the more famous stories about martial arts. So when you talk about like, well, how did they come up with this stuff? Some of it was like on the battlefield, like one person trying to kill the other person, and they find out what works, they find out what doesn't work. So the legend behind Tai Chi is Chen Feng is watching two animals fight. And there are lots of legends about the ways that other forms of martial arts and Kung Fu especially were invented. And it was by observing the way that these animals were moving. So he was watching, also in the 12th century, he was watching a bird, I think it's a crane, fighting a snake. And so he sees like how the snake is moving and like attacking and darting, and he sees how the bird is like able to stay out of the way and like peck at the snake, and I think the crane ends up killing the snake. I wasn't there. This probably didn't actually happen, but that's the legend behind it. So in Tai Chi, as in some kinds of Kung Fu, you've heard of like the famous animal styles of Kung Fu. Eagle Claw is kind of one of them, and a lot of like praying mantis style. They like watch the way that the animals move and kind of mimic them. In Tai Chi, there's a lot of this. Like the postures that we learn are named after animals. There's like snake creeps down, white stork cools wings. So I think of it like I'm a stork and I'm like kicking a snake in the face when it's attacking me. But he like allegedly watched these animals fighting, and he thought, oh, this is how I'm going to use like the laws of nature to create a style that is not only like good for fighting, but also is kind of like helps a person be in like commune with nature. And when people ask me about like, what are the best styles, like what animal style of martial arts should I learn? I'll say the same thing that my Sifu said, which is if you want to learn to fight like an animal, the animal you should fight like is a human being, because you are a human being, and you should be fighting with the way that works best for a person that stands on two legs and has arms and can make fists and can hold weapons and all that stuff. If you learn a little bit from the way that another animal moves, or you kind of get some inspiration from that, that's cool. But you don't want to pretend you have wings. You don't want to pretend that you have fangs. You want to just like fight like a human being does. That said, some of the movements in Tai Chi are super beautiful, and you can see when somebody is really amazing at Tai Chi, it flows in such a natural way. It's super inspiring and can be incredible not only to watch, of course, when you see somebody really good, but to do it yourself, you feel right. It feels like when I do Tai Chi, I have a hard time explaining the way that it feels besides just that. It feels like everything is right with my body, with my whole being, and like with the world. And this is not every time I do Tai Chi. This is when I do Tai Chi well. And I can have a similar experience when I'm practicing martial arts. So one of the reasons martial arts has been around for so long, not what the legends will say, which the legends say that Chen Sengfang lived to be like 200 years old or like older than that. Some people say he's still alive. His Tai Chi granted him immortality, and he's still hiding out there somewhere in the mountains teaching Tai Chi somewhere. But it is because it is not only a great workout, which is a good thing to get out of martial arts. Not only is it good for self-defense, which is also a good thing to get out of it, but the spiritual side of it, the way that we are impacted, touched deeply in a way that is lasting and profound. This really is why martial arts has been around for so long. Fighting has been around and will continue to be around probably for forever. And that's because the world is kind of based on this, competition, survival of the fittest, and if you are able to win and not die, then you'll survive and pass on your genes and your knowledge. And fighting style is great. But we, luckily, live in a time and a place that is not so dangerous that we have to constantly be thinking about fighting for survival. It's a good thing to keep in mind, but that's not our real purpose in martial arts. You can learn enough to defend yourself in most situations within the first couple of months or the first year, let's say. So why do people practice for longer and longer? You've been practicing for a couple years, 3 years-ish, right? Some of the people watching at home, Kaya, Tanya, have been practicing with me forever. I mean, like 10 years, close to. Some people even longer than that. I've been practicing for 25 years. It's not just because it's a good workout. It's not just because self-defense. I learned most of that stuff a while ago. I get plenty of workout chasing my baby around the house. It's about the internal aspects of it. That's why this is a fitting topic for a meditation class. So it is a moving meditation when we are moving with and feeling our breath and being aware of our body's movements. We can let go of all of the extra thought and just be in the present. Again, that's what this wall scroll says, Mushin, no mind. So no distraction. Mushin is the state of mind that we get into when we are meditating. When somebody asks my Sifu the definition of Zen, first of all, you want to be very careful asking somebody the definition of Zen, because a Zen master will oftentimes just hit you and say, that's Zen. That experience that you're having right now where you're just totally in the present and nothing else matters except the pain you just felt. That's Zen. So be careful who you ask what is Zen. But when we're feeling nice, we'll say, it's any practice that puts you into the state of Mushin, no mind. And if you're having a good meditation where you're just sitting, breathing, and your mind is hardly wandering, you're really present, you're present to your breath, and you're able to recognize your thoughts immediately and let them go, and you just feel like you're kind of in the zone, as they say. This is Mushin. When you are moving in martial arts, in Tai Chi, or in sparring, or in grappling in Jiu-Jitsu, when somebody is trying to hit you, or trying to choke you, or trying to trap you, trying to throw you, and you are able to let go of the fear of losing, we call this letting go of victory and defeat. If you are no longer thinking about that, worried about that, you're just present and watching and feeling what your partner is doing, and you're feeling what your own body is doing. No distractions. Oftentimes there's no room for distraction, because if you just get distracted, then they get you. That's Mushin. So you are, Mushin means no mind, but it really is like you are filling your mind, you're filling your whole being with the present moment. And to be able to do that in a sitting meditation is absolutely wonderful. It is imperative. And to be able to do that with movement is imperative. We can only spend so much of our lives sitting or sleeping. Some of our lives we have to be in movement. And of course, moving in a way that is martial arts, self-defense, all that stuff is wonderful, but you're walking down the street. You can kind of be in Mushin as you are walking, as you're doing the dishes is my favorite example. This is really the opportunity for us as practitioners of martial arts. And so there is, of course, I'll finish with this, there are two aspects to martial arts. There's the martial, fighting side, and this is what we spend most of our time in class learning, is how to do the physicality of it. And then there is the art side, which we will usually refer to as the internal experience that we're having. The art is not like when you are a painter and you think of creating an artwork, like the painting that you make is the art. This is what people think of. In martial arts, you are the art, and of course it's the techniques that you're improving on. It is, more importantly than that, the experience that you're having and the experience that you are kind of creating for yourself in everyday life outside of the dojo. This is your art. As a martial artist, you are taking the things that you're learning, practicing, and then using them outside, not just for fighting, self-defense. And those two aspects, like yin and yang, if you think of it in terms of colors, my Sifu said this, it's like if the physical fighting part of martial arts is red, and the internal part of martial arts is yellow. It's not red and yellow next to each other. It's the synthesis of these. It's orange. And so that's why we have the orange color on the fountain over there. And I guess you could say it's why this punching bag is red, because we just use that for punching and kicking. But orange is not only an interesting pop of color in the dojo, it reminds us that what we're really after is a synthesis of mind and body. And from the beginning, even when General Yu was kind of creating this style, there was not only the purely physical fighting part of it, it was also an internal practice. And so a lot of the stuff that we're learning, people literally died to perfect the art or they died because they messed up and somebody killed them on the battlefield. Or people like me and my Steve, who just spend our lives kind of learning how to do it better, learning how to teach it better. And so take that part seriously. And there is the internal part of it, which has been around for even longer, well, not longer than fighting, but longer than the martial arts, fighting part by itself. So when we meditate, which I'm going to stop talking, we're going to meditate in a second, there is very little physicality going on. There's part of it, and I'll talk about the posture, the importance of that when we sit down. But remember that this is a practice that is meant to aid us in everything that we do in life, including our martial arts practice. So the physicality of our practice goes well with the internal part of our practice. Sitting meditation goes with a moving meditation. And if you're able to get to a place in your sitting meditation where you are letting go of your thoughts and just being present with your breath, that's something that you want to be able to do in your physical practice as well. So let's sit, and I'll go over some ideas for the ways that we sit. I like to sit on a bench like this because it's a little bit more comfortable for my knees. If you want to sit on your knees, you can take that cushion and flip it on its side, and that's easier. You can just put it right between your knees like that. You can also sit cross-legged. Yeah, leave this light on for a second, Sam. So when we're sitting, cross-legged or on your knees, you don't have to do like a full lotus. You can just sit in a way that's comfortable. You want your back straight. So your hands are here, and then you're going to roll your shoulders back and relax. You're not tense and rigid, but you're also not slouching like this. So we're in this position here. You see how the hands are upturned at the hips? You don't want them sliding down because this makes you slouch. So we're like this. The hands can be separate or they can be together. I usually sit like this, but this can work as well. And then your eyes are closed. So you can hit the light, Sam. So with our eyes closed, we'll close eyes. Your eyes are upturned. And you don't want to have your eyes crossed. If you start to feel like you're getting a headache during meditation, you are probably crossing your eyes. So allow them to be slightly upturned, and we call that focusing on the third eye, which is kind of the space between your eyebrows or just above it on the center of your forehead. And when you visualize that spot on your forehead, and you can just kind of imagine with your mind, your eyes will naturally start to raise up. And that's what you're looking for, a slight raising up of your eyes with your eyes closed still. There are styles of meditation where the eyes are open, but usually we practice eyes closed. And if that's not working, then just take your finger and touch your forehead in the middle and then just feel that spot. Your eyes should again kind of naturally raise up. So from here, we'll take a few deep breaths together. Begin with all the breath out, and then breathe in through the nose. Hold it at the top for 3 seconds. And breathe out through the nose or the mouth. Make sure you're breathing from the belly. Inhale. We'll slow the breath down a little bit. Hold it at the top. Exhale. So we get that full exhale, so you can do a full inhale. Hold. Out. Two more, a little slower. Hold. Out. Last breath in. Hold. And we'll finish with a double exhale. And then just let your breath come in naturally. And then let your breath go out naturally. So you're no longer trying to manipulate the breath. This is a key detail here. What we were just doing is a breathing exercise where you're trying to do something specific with your breath. In meditation, you're not trying to do anything. You just allow the breath to move through your body. And when your mind wanders, as it will, just continue refocusing on the breath. This is, again, an ancient practice. It's been honed over thousands of years. It works very well to clear the mind and focus. And it's a practice. You are forming the habit of releasing your thoughts, releasing your attachments, and creating the new habit of focusing on the breath. If you're having a difficult time, maybe you have a thought that keeps showing up, you can just label that as thought. So there's no self-judgment. There's not even a judgment of the thought. It's not evil, it's just thought. And that will help you let it go and then refocus on the breath. Continue doing that as many times as you can throughout the next 10 minutes or so.